All right, thank you, everyone. So kind of a brief overview of the 2006 comprehensive plan. It identified the city's overall vision for the community to develop it, and they usually last about 20 years. The second component of that was to identify the principles that we would follow through in our land use policies. There was four primary principles: community development, which dealt with identity, balance of residential districts, and other social and environmental data. There was economic development, balancing that with our community identity and development, improving the Olive Boulevard corridor, supporting our industrial parks. Third was public spaces or open spaces, and that was talking about both parks, trail connections, aesthetic improvements along the corridor, street, sidewalk improvements, our bike trails, things like that. Any new development should help support and facilitate those type of things. And then transportation connections. Transportation connections dealt with a lot of things about mobility, which included, whether it was a sidewalks, it was vehicle movement, it was traffic along Olive, it was the bike trails, it was the greenways, and together all these four kind of work together. So when we review a development, let's say like the Firestone, we look at how does it support those four principles. Community identity, it was bringing the building closer to the front. Some people like that, some people don't, but it was reflective to the identity that was within that comprehensive plan. Redeveloping the Veterans Fountain, that was part of the process. Improving the sidewalks along the Olive Boulevard corridor and access into the buildings that goes with the transportation connection. And then, of course, economic development. It was an old, tired automobile facility there that we were trying to essentially just either get improved or something happened. I mean, we worked with the owner for a long period of time until they got to the point to sell the property. It got redeveloped, and that was all part of the process. We supported those things. But the plan has matured, so has the community. The community has evolved over the past 20 years. It's very dynamic and reflective of a diverse group of residents. So we're here to reassess those four principles and also determine what other things should be added or expanded, and whether those original four principles are still valid today, and are we going in the right direction, and how do we improve and learn from the overall process in the past 20 years. Comprehensive plan is supposed to reflect the community's values, and that's where this group will assist the plan commission, who really puts together that plan and forwards it to the council for how it sets its land use policy. And again, I'll go back to that in a second. And the plan commission has a plate full of items. It meets twice a month in there, and what we talked about in an effort to support and create a more diverse and nimble group of individuals are reflected throughout the community, we decided to create this advisory committee. All of you are here because I felt everyone has a different experience in our community. From people that back up to industrial parks, other people that have seen development right on their back door, people that oversee private streets, and then our chairs of our Economic Development Commission, our Parks Commission, and then our Planning Commission. And we have two members online, Omar Malik, who's with our Board of Adjustment, and then Brian Lewis, who's also with our Plan Commission, and all that. So you all have, bring in different components of that diversity within our community, whether it's through impacts of development, streets, locations, and all that. And there, so we were trying to be very careful to ensure that we were reflective. The other role in there is that we know that a lot of people. And that's the key thing about the advisory committee, is to keep our residents, your neighbors, your associations informed and active. And we hope that, utilizing your networks, you'll get other people involved through the process. Because again, the goal of this comprehensive plan update is to reflect the community's values in there. These are the things and the resources that Don and I will use as we, bring things forward to the council or developments that come in, how we guide a developer through a development process. I should go back to introductions. My name is Carlos Trejo. I'm the Director of Planning and Community Development for the City of Olivet. I started here in 2002 and was fortunate to start the opportunity of developing the first comprehensive plan. So I kind of gave away how long I've been here now. It's been 20 years. And it's really cool to be part of that next process because I actually saw it from incubation to what's going on today, and then being able to be part of this process to reassess what will happen tomorrow. And I don't think I'll be here in the next 20 years, but it is kind of neat that I got to see that first 20. We got Don Doty. Pardon?
I didn't think I was gonna be here.
Yeah. Don Doty's our senior planner. Yeah. And then Barbara Sondag, our city manager. Outside of that, if we can just go down the room and introduce ourselves, and then we'll talk about a little bit more about the meeting process. Yes.
Yes. I'm Patterson. Economic Development Commission. I've been on it since I think '08. Just sort of got involved in it because I would like to see some of the development that kind of could have happened along all of them. It's kind of come to fruition. Been here with my wife Diane since '93. So almost 20 years, maybe longer.
So I'm Carol Wagoner. I grew up in all of that. My husband and I have a house here now. I've been on the planning commission. I predate Carlos. So I started before the city kept records. So I've been on for a long time, and I'm serving as vice chair of the planning commission now. And I want to say, by profession, I was a professional urban planner, and I've been through this process a zillion times. But I can't tell you all enough that as far as this group is concerned, that's really irrelevant. Because this is all about process. It has nothing to do with facts being right or wrong. So I can give you my insights, but that doesn't make it right just because I've done this before. What's important is what's right today for our community. That's the only thing.
My name's Rob Gergio. I'm the chairman of the planning PCDC. I'm also on the Board of Appeals. I've been Olivet resident since 2000, and actually my second home about it. So, and I guess I started at the planning and zoning probably 7 years ago, about that, because I got cornered by Carl.
Hi, I'm Jim Person. I'm chair of Parks Commission. Lived in Olivet for about 25 years. So seen a lot of things happen along Olive. Parks have gone through their own process of planning and so forth, and you're seeing it coming out of the ground at this point. And I'm really anxious to see how this process works because I was a closet urban geography major well, not a closet, but I was an urban geography major in college. So I have an interest in this as well. So.
Evening, my name is Rick Knox and I'm on the city council and I'm the council liaison. I have been an employee for 41 years with the police department. And it just seemed like for several years that things were talked about and never got done for so many years. And probably within the last 20, maybe 25, things started happening in Olivet with some development. But the diversity in our city is second to none. We are the highest foreign-born city for residents on a percentage rate for anywhere in the St. Louis metropolitan area, which I find to be great. The other thing the last 10 years, things have really started happening around Olivet. With the city council, the city staff, and it's just very exciting, and I want to see that continue to happen.
Hi, I'm Keisha Lee. I have served on the Parks and Recreation Commission for the last 7 years. I think, give or take. I also have the pleasure of serving as president of the school board for Ladue. I've been in my home for the last 11 years. And this community I have loved more and grown and seen a sense of community more than anywhere else I've ever lived. My children have thrived here. I've been very active in community. Happy to see a lot of the changes since I've moved here and been a part of the movement.
Annie Bocetti. I live at 8937 Iroquois. I bought my house in 2018. But before that, I went to college and grew up in Kirkwood, so I'm a St. Louis native. I am a developmental therapist for Missouri First Steps, so I work with toddlers age 0 to 3 that have developmental disabilities. So I'm new to this world, but I'm excited to see what kind of involvement I can have in this process.
Good evening. I'm Eric Siegel, new resident to Olivet, 2014. I'm currently the trustee for our subdivision Indian Trails, mostly because I showed up at the meetings and then you get assigned these things. One out of Ladue High School now and one sophomore. I've also spent in my professional life about 20 years in community development and currently the community development lending manager for Central Bank. Happy to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Stephanie Todd, I've lived in Olivet about 25 years now, 2 different houses, and yeah, I'm happy to be part of the process.
Omar?
Good evening, everybody. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, sorry I can't be there in person today. Omar Malik. We live on Mansfield Drive in Oak Estates. I'm on the Oak Estates board. I just joined last year. I'm also on the Olivet Zoning Board of Adjustment. I've been on the board there for 2 years. I'm a associate general counsel and legal division at Edward Jones at the headquarters. We've been living in Olivet since 2017, so relatively new. My wife is from here. I grew up in Buffalo, New York, and really honored to be part of this this committee.
Brian?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Brian Lewis. Sorry I can't be there on carpool duty tonight. I'll have to drop a little bit early. I've been in Olivet with my family for about 10 years. And I'm on the planning board with Rob and Carol as well. And quite enjoy being able to be participating in everything in our community and helping to make it better. So looking forward to seeing everyone in person next time.
Again, thank you, everyone. I really appreciate the time and effort in there. And I know everybody's committed to the community and making this a really dynamic sense of place and a great place to live in. It's a great place to work in, I can tell you that. Let me talk about meetings in the process, just so you have a little bit of overview. Our meetings are open to the public. We do take minutes through the process. Now, minutes just reflect, the roll call, who is here, major comments and statements. So they're not transcripts. They're what we call meeting minutes, and then they record any motions that are made or in actual votes, so that those are kept in our archives or and such. But the general discussion, sometimes we'll have some summary, sometimes we'll have some bullet points. Just depends on give some context to actions that are taken and things like that. Because we are reviewing documents that are part of a bid process, in there we will be going to what they call closed session, meaning that at that point that we start discussions about the the actual bids or contents that come in, we will actually close the meeting. We won't allow anybody from the public in there, and then you have a discussion among yourselves. And why is because it's a negotiation and there are competitive advantages, disadvantages that somebody could have in the process by just watching the shows and such. So the state statutes allow when scenarios like that take place, that they can be done in what we call a closed session or behind closed doors in there. No votes, once you're done with a closed session, you need to reflect whether any votes were taken, and if there were votes were taken, what the results were and such. Now, I still have to take minutes while we're in closed session. Those are kept as part of the process. And I think in the end, they're released after a decision has been made. They're made available to the public. But again, they're kind of short summaries of what actions take place and all that. So when we get to the specific discussions of the qualifications that came in, we'll pause the recording because I will post this up online, and then we'll I got everybody here, but if any of the members have to leave early, I am going to record it. So if you needed to find some information or so, we can always share that with you in there. But again, please note that the information is private or has sensitive material that we need to be cautious or careful in the process. Again, the advisory committee, I gave everybody a brief summary. Your advocates of the community. You're going to help advise on the selection of the planning consultant through the review of qualifications, interviews, and then put forward a recommendation to the planning commission. You will advise on the development of the project schedule, including the dates for public engagement. Again, we're going to capitalize on your network strengths. I know everybody here knows a lot of people, and we want to take advantage of that in there. And then each of you bring different unique attributes and expertise to this process that, from my end, representing the community, we're trying to take advantage of, because you guys are really unique in different realms and expertises. And then you'll help us in the review and the drafting of that document and the presentation. Again, but you're advising the plan commission. Eventually, the final document goes to the plan commission. It's their document. They do the vote, they do the final review, and they do the final adoption in that process. So that is kind of a nutshell. And there, I'd be glad to answer any questions. Carol, you're familiar with the process. If there's anything else I might have missed in there, let me know. Okay. Outside of that, any questions on the meeting, the commission, the committee, or so? Okay.
One of the things I would add to that is that in the, from the point in which we engage a consultant, it's that consultant is going to really be operating and running these meetings. So for us to tell you, we think you'll meet this many days or when you're going to meet, we don't really know yet until we get the consultant on board, and we'll get that kind of more spelled out in the time frame and that type of thing. So I think this is really the first key pieces is finding that consultant that you're comfortable with working with, who you think is going to be the most engaging with our community, and will kind of give us the best product. And again, it's a vision. And one of the things I would say is, like, I'm super excited about this process. I think it is oftentimes when there's a strategic, I've never had a process of a comprehensive plan when we have so clearly ticked off some of the vision items from the prior comprehensive plan. It feels really feels very different doing this. And so it feels as though it opens up a real vision. And I think we're really ready to take on some of the bigger, some different issues, diversity, the environment, variety of things, the other resident housing that we didn't have in the first one. So I think it's really exciting. I thank you all for being here.
The most important parts of this process to me is the community engagement component. And that's where we all have a lot of input. But that's the point at which the city reaches out and touches the community and gets an idea of community's issues, values, and feedback. And that comes through that process. And to me, that is the most important part of the whole planning process. It's getting, you don't have anything unless you really have good.
So the next thing, and a thing that we can still discuss in an open format, in there is the request for qualifications. That was a public document that was posted on our website and issued out to various planning consultants throughout the St. Louis area. We also posted it out nationally. My department wrote the request for qualifications, and then we brought it to the planning commission for its review and input in there, and then we published that out. Core things about the contents within the request for qualifications is one, to make the consultant aware that we have a plan, and we have a plan that we think has worked well in there. We've learned from that plan, and we think that some of our principles need to be expanded. Equity, sustainability in there. And each of those are pretty broad words in terms that, equity can be anything from social or impacts to how some subdivisions were impacted by developments and how they were impacted in another area in there. So, those are key things that we thought were necessary in considering in the next plan. And then the other important content that we made sure that the consultants were aware is that this plan, we really want a plan that's reflective of the community's overall vision. And that we felt that public outreach in there is a critical part of this plan. And we're looking at, as we go through the review and talk about the consultants, that is a critical component, if not the most important component of what is their experience, how good or how unique are their roles in getting public input. I was doing a presentation last night at UMSL when I was asked a question. It's like, well, how do you get public input in there? Because I was telling them we were updating our plan. I said, well, I know that back in 2002, I was at the city's Summer Fest issuing out flyers. We actually gave people paper in there. And I said, in 2022, I don't know. It's like, I could probably ask my son, probably knows more means of getting information out than I will in there. But that we were kind of excited about that because we've seen, various video clips, you can do internet polls, you can use all sorts of social medias and things today. But again, you got to be cognizant that we're not all wired in the community. A lot of people like the old traditional means of gathering information. We have a lot of good outlets and events that take place in our community. And we're looking for other unique ways in that process because we want to ensure that everybody's got a voice, and that's always said and about in different things. But here we're committed to do that. The council's funded this plan pretty well, and I think we tried to stress that that's a critical component of what our expectation is. So I just wanted to know that. Anything else, Don or Barb, you want to add?
One of the things, so you know, is you're going to be looking at 3 proposals tonight and talking about who do you want to interview, that type of thing once you go into a closed session. Once that the proposal was written it was more as an RFQ, and so we have so you're going to be looking at their qualifications and not their price. What will happen after that is we'll negotiate with the chosen vendor, and then we will move forward from that. We did ask them to give us an estimate so that we could kind of keep everybody a little bit honest, and that was supposed to be all in a separate sealed envelope. A couple people made a mistake. We tried to take those out. But just so you know, so that'll be the process, and that and my goal is that once this committee kind of makes a recommendation, it goes to the planning commission, and then we'll be able to kind of, on that recommendation, I'll look to enter into negotiations and then take that back to the council for final approval, because the council's holds the purse strings.
Out the RFQ ahead of time and the three proposals, so it gave us a chance to review them. But I have a question. So can you clarify what we actually expect from the consultant? What is their deliverable?
They will have a traditional, the plans usually contain some traditional components to it, like who are we, a demographics component, an assessment component, and such, an evaluation of our land use regulations, whether it's a zoning code, building code, things like that. Then there is an overview of how they conducted an engagement process with their community. That becomes a section within itself, and what those results were. Using that information, creating a visioning component, similar to our current plan, talked about dynamic sense of place. And while they have a small preamble, what is dynamic sense of place, it goes through various illustrations and some fundamental principles, I'm going to use that word again, of what should be included in something being dynamic, and what it should entail. That will include it in there. Then it talks about its recommendations to what the city should do within its current codes, and then set up some type of time schedule of when things should be implemented and incorporated, and then how you kind of reassess, is a process working or not?
Okay,
And
so-
that's pretty broad. I don't know if that.
Yeah, because it looks like we already have our vision.
Mhm.
So they would just so it sounds like what their main purpose is to review all our codes and then see how they should be updated to reflect the new vision.
It's a very good question, because one is, I'm a strong supporter of the current vision, but that was, again, that vision is still 20 years ago, and our communities changed considerably in there. So what I would hope that comes part of this process is either a reaffirmation that there's community consensus in continuing this vision. There is a tweaking of the vision or redirection of the vision, or are we, have our priorities changed in there? Yes.
So one of our jobs is to take a look at our existing plan, what the consultant will be doing, and going through the community engagement process. And part of what they will be doing is testing the current desires of the community against that overarching vision. What do communities change a lot, time. So the values today may not be what we valued 20 years ago. And so they go through that process to essentially test that vision or test options related to the vision about what our next 20 years might look like. And the new plan that they come up with will be a set of guidelines, policies, maps, pictures, whatever it takes to communicate the thinking that they learned as a part of their research and the guidance that they get from the community. It may or may not look like the plan that we have right now. It just depends on if that still works. We've done a lot of things, as Bob said, that the recommendations in that document. So in many ways, in planning lexicon, we kind of finished. We're kind of ready to move on. And so that's the germination of this next part.
And if I can clarify that, in the existing plan, there were sites that were specified for or identified for development.
almost all of those sites, if not all of them, have been developed. Therefore, we need to find our new sites.
Oh, so it is that, the plan does get that specific, that you should do this, or you should, buy out all these houses and turn this into a park or
There should be
whatever.
some action steps.
Something, yeah, okay.
Can they? It doesn't have.
Yeah, doesn't. And if you, one of the things that I think we're gonna, as Carol said, we're a different community and the world's different now, right? Since 2006. And I think one of the things you're gonna see is the focus of the 2006 comprehensive plan. It was a vision for the community, but it was a vision for the community that really focused on the Olive Boulevard and on the industrial parks. And I think what you're gonna see, I would anticipate what we're gonna see in this comprehensive plan is going to be, how does that vision from 2006, how does that roll over into residential development? How does that roll over into areas of environmental, and so I think you're gonna, I think you're gonna see some changes. But how specific it
Yeah,
gets
so,
is gonna be.
so I'm not
is gonna be
arguing
kinda-
that we should
yeah.
do it, or that things haven't changed.
No, I'm trying to
just
explain what's gonna
wondering-
be different.
Yeah, without real firm deliverables, it's hard to judge the consultants.
The other thing
That's
is,
what I'm
if you
saying.
look at under performance management with regard to, in the packet, with the agenda, I think it's, next to the last
Well, I'm looking at
page.
the RFP, so that's, oh, here, yeah, it's okay, it's
Yeah.
on the RFP.
Yeah, those are really kind of
Develop
more your
schedule.
deliverables. You're gonna see, you're gonna get a schedule, they're gonna tell us what the presentations are, they're gonna tell us what the metrics are. They're gonna look at the public engagement, we're gonna get draft recommendations, the final pen, and then the final presentation. Those are our deliverables, the hardcore deliverables.
Okay. All right.
So every plan, if it's done well, is different. There isn't like a plan and it works for every community. So what our deliverable will ultimately be for all of that, at this time, but that's what we're going to have to see. There isn't a standard format or thing. What we know is that we need to know how should we plan and focus our resources over the next 20 years. We need to know, what kinds of things is the community interested in, and what do they want, this kind of redevelopment or that kind of redevelopment? Does the community today want big high rises or not? Does the community today want more apartments than we're already getting or less? And those are all choices that we're gonna have. And that's what the consultant will help us figure out. So the specifics of what you're asking,
No, well,
we
no,
don't know.
I'm not asking that they tell us how many A, B, and C ahead of time, but we need to be able to define what we want from them so that we know that they've met our contract.
And that's part of what the process that
Okay.
they'll be going
All
through.
right.
And it's gonna be done in phases. You know,
Yeah, I've seen it. Yeah.
So
Right.
at each step or each phase, there'll be a set of deliverables
Yeah,
that will help guide us to the next
Okay.
phase.
okay.
And in there, and again, Stephanie, just to, in that drafting, trying to get, because I had to get that expectation out to there. So on there, there is it's like the fifth page of what should the comprehensive plan update include, and that's speaking to the consultants of what we're looking for them to provide, to provide that
Right.
review, that assessment, the engagement, the visioning, making sure they look at what those outside agencies are doing, accountability, creating measures for accountability, providing recommendations, and then setting up action steps in there.
Okay.
I hope that, and it's critical because it's important. It's a very good question that you asked, that they looked at these and know what our expectations are. And then, what we put in for performance management, then that's our role here of how we want to guide them through the process. that being said, we added two other major components to them to ensure that we're serious about. One is, of course, looking at, equity in terms of, and community involvement, and then sustainability. That those things, and we hear from our residents, or in our plan commission meetings continuously, of how that balance takes place and how those are being considered in our land decisions. And there, so that was also put out there upfront, it's like, that we're really committed to do that. So I hope that kind of reflected of what that expectation.
Thanks for the clarification.
Good question. I appreciate it. Anything else?
Carlos, I just had a quick question. Unfortunately, I need to drop soon, but looking at the different proposals, I'm curious if it's often common to have ones, is it better to have ones that are local or remote? And, I can see advantages and disadvantages to both, but I'm just kind of curious on a perspective of that, because there's bias to have local, but then there's also knowing the area, and it's different the way you approach it. Just curious.
I think that'd be probably something we would discuss in closed session if we're ready to do that. I'll move quickly so we can have you in that process, if that's all right with everyone.
That's fine. Makes sense. Thank you.
That's okay.
Because this is a planning commission, essentially a planning commission document, typically the committees will have a chair, you can have a vice chair. We would recommend that it be the chair and the vice chair of the planning commission service, the chair and the vice chair of this committee, if that's okay with everybody. Okay. Pardon me? Sure.
I move that the chairman and vice chair of the planning commission be the chairman and vice chair of this commission.
I second the motion.
The motion to place Robert Dragell as chairman and Carol Wagner as vice chairman. Ms. Todd?
Yes.
Mr. Ziegel?
Yes.
Ms. Bichetti?
Yes.
Ms. Lee?
Yes.
Councilman Knox?
Yes.
Mr. Persons?
Yes.
Mr. Pettership?
Yes.
I'm actually part of this group, and we'll go through in there, so I would vote yes, as Carlos. City Manager Sondag?
Yes.
So. Yes, and Mr. Malik
Yes.
and Brian, do I still have? Yeah, I think I left.
Yeah, I'm still here. I'll say yes.
Mr. Lewis?
Yes.
Thank you, sir. And the motion passes unanimously. I'll put you to abstain. All right, thank you. Next, I would ask if there would be a motion to go into closed session for discussion of the requests for the qualifications that were submitted in accordance with state statutes, section 610-021, subsection 12, which it deals with negotiated contracts. Mhm. Yes.
So, once I so move.
See, thank you. Second?
Second.
Persons, thank you. And then I'm gonna go through the vote one more time again, right? Ms. Todd?
Yes.
Mr. Siegel?
Yes.
Ms. Machete?
Yes.
Ms. Lee?
Yes.
Councilman Knox?
Yes.
Mr. Persons?
Yes.
Mr. Dragell?
Yes.
Ms. Wagner?
Yes.
Mr. Pattership?
Yes.
I, Mr. Trejo will vote yes.
Yes.
Ms. Doty?
Yes.
Mr. Lewis? Awesome. Mr. Malik?
Yes.
Sure. Motion passes unanimously. Part of the formalities, I'll note that the advisory committee is out of the closed session, no votes were taken. And then, again, the next order of business is to schedule a date and time, and we'll get that information out to the commission members for interviews, and then if
And
there's
we
any
have a
other.
consensus that we were going to interview all three.
That is correct.
Other than we're gonna send questions to you if we need to get that out.
That is correct.
Kind of free for the interview. Any other questions or comments before we adjourn?
Will we then meet afterwards? Like, will we set up another meeting like this to go over them and decide, make more decisions, or? And
It
what
could-
would that timeline
It
look
could
like?
be different. It could be within that same day after everyone's gone through. If sometimes it's that simple, or if everybody wants to kind of mull it over and come back for one more discussion afterwards. If it gets too long.
I think that's what we did when we were looking at the city hall and we were evaluating consultants. We met a follow-up time to kind of go over and discuss the various comments. What's that? It was a long time ago, yeah, but I thought it was effective.
So Barb, I assume that if we've gone through everybody, we may have follow-up questions for the consultant. So if we did that, we could formulate them and get them to Carlos and Carlos could do it.
Yes.
What happens is, it all depends on what happens during that meeting. We'll decide that.
Did we adjourn?
All right. Again, thank you, everyone. This is exciting, and I really appreciate you guys being part of this. So, thanks.
Thank you.
Day, the 24th is us. Darren Mann is our guest.
Are we doing this Monday?
No, no, it's the 24th.
It was gonna be a fun day.
Yeah.